The biggest meeting hall in the galaxy stood on Zentari Prime like a giant crystal mountain. It was so huge that 15 million beings could sit inside it at once. The hall had rows and rows of seats that went up and up, almost touching the artificial suns that lit the place from above. At the very front sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The crystal people took the first row, their bodies made of living diamond that sparkled and shone. They could turn entire planets into crystal with just a thought. Behind them sat the mind readers, giant beings with huge brains that glowed with purple light. They could read thoughts from across the galaxy and move mountains with their minds. In the third row sat the machine empire. These were not living beings, but metal creatures the size of buildings. Inside their chests burned tiny suns that gave them power. They had built robot armies that could fight for 1,000 years without stopping. Row after row, the seats held beings who could destroy stars, bend time, or create new forms of life. Each species sat according to how powerful they were. The stronger you were, the closer to the front you sat. It had been this way for millions of years. Jake Morrison walked slowly through the hall, leading a small group of humans. He was tall with brown hair and calm blue eyes. Behind him came Lisa Hayes, a woman with short blonde hair who moved like a soldier. Next was Ben Carter, a man with thick glasses who kept looking at everything with curious eyes. Amy Fletcher walked beside them, a woman with red hair who studied alien life forms. The other beings watched the humans pass by. Some laughed quietly. Others shook their heads. These humans were so small and weak compared to everyone else. They had only learned to fly between stars a few years ago. Most of the beings in the hall had been flying through space since before humans learned to make fire. Ambassador Morrison called out a voice like thunder. It came from Overlord Kefex, a being made of living shadow who ate planets for breakfast. Why do you walk to the back? Your people fought well in the border wars. You should sit closer to the front. Jake smiled and kept walking. Thank you for the offer, but we like where we are going. Many beings turned to look. In galaxy politics, where you sat showed how important you were. The most powerful beings sat in front. The weakest sat in back. For humans to choose the back row when they could sit closer to the front made no sense to anyone watching. Lisa Hayes found her seat in the very last row. She had asked for these seats herself, though she never told anyone why. She sat down and looked around the hall with sharp eyes. Next to her, Ben Carter pulled out what looked like a simple tablet for taking notes, but it was much more than that. Ladies and gentlemen, Jake said quietly to his team, let us watch and learn. The other beings did not notice how the humans sat. They were not just sitting anywhere in the back row. Each human had picked their exact seat very carefully. From where they sat, they could see every important group in the hall. They could see all the doors and ways to get out. Under their simple clothes, they carried weapons that the security guards had not found. Supreme Chancellor Vilix floated above the center of the hall. He was an ancient being who could live forever and had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. His voice filled the entire hall without effort. We meet today to talk about a great danger. At the edge of our galaxy, new enemies have appeared. They call themselves the Void Harbingers. They have destroyed 3 star systems already. Our strongest members will tell us how to fight them. The humans sat quietly and listened. They wrote notes on their tablets. They did not ask questions. They did not give opinions. To everyone else, they looked like students learning from teachers. The crystal people spoke first. Their leader, a being like a walking mountain of diamond, stood up. We will build a wall of living crystal across space. It will be so strong that nothing can break through. The mind readers spoke next. Their leader's brain pulsed with bright light as he talked. We will create a mental barrier around our galaxy. Anyone who tries to cross it will go insane." The machine empire rolled forward on metal legs. Their leader was the size of a building and spoke with a voice like grinding metal. "We will build robot ships as big as moons. They will fight forever, without getting tired." Each plan was bigger and more powerful than the last. The beings in the hall nodded and made approving sounds. These were the kinds of plans that had kept the galaxy safe for millions of years. Big shows of power that scared enemies away. Hours passed. Many species spoke about their mighty weapons and ancient powers. The humans just sat and listened, sometimes writing notes that no one could read. Finally, Supreme Chancellor Vilix looked toward the back of the hall. "Ambassador Morrison, does your young species have anything to add?" Jake stood up slowly. Every being in the hall turned to look at him. Creatures who could see through time itself watched this small human with curious eyes. "We do have some thoughts, Chancellor, but we know our species is still learning. Perhaps we should share our ideas later, when it would be more appropriate." A sound like laughter came from different parts of the hall. These powerful beings were being polite to the humans, the way adults might be nice to a child who wanted to help with important work. General Thrax leaned forward in his seat. He was a warrior whose people had conquered half the galaxy before they got bored and stopped fighting. "Come now, Ambassador. We are all friends here. Tell us what you think." The way he said it made it clear that he did not really want to hear what the humans thought. He was just being polite. Everyone could see that these small, weak creatures could not possibly understand galactic warfare. Jake looked at Lisa, who gave him a tiny nod. "Very well. We have been studying how the Void Harbingers attack. We think the current defense plans might not work." The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. These beings had never been told their plans were not good enough. Admiral Nexus, a creature made of pure energy who had single-handedly destroyed entire civilizations, spoke with anger in his voice. "Not good enough? Young human, we have fought wars that lasted longer than your entire species has existed. We have powers you cannot even imagine." Jake stayed calm. "With respect, Admiral, that might be the problem. You fight the same way you have always fought. But the Void Harbingers are different from anything you have faced before." Amy Fletcher turned on her tablet and showed a picture in the air above it. "We studied the remains from the Kepler attack. The Void Harbingers do not just have power. They learn and change during battle. They adapt to whatever you throw at them." The picture showed the attack on the Kepler star system. The Harbingers had started the battle fighting one way, but as the defenders used their weapons, the Harbingers changed. They learned from each attack and found ways to counter it. By the end, they were using abilities no one had ever seen before. "Your defense plans," Amy continued, "are exactly what they expect. Big, obvious, powerful. The kind of defenses that the strongest species in the galaxy would naturally build." The silence that followed was complete. These beings had ruled the galaxy for so long that no one had ever questioned their methods. To suggest that they were predictable was almost unthinkable. Lord Commander Zephyr stood up to his full height. He was 4 meters tall, and his body crackled with the power of stars. "You dare suggest that we, the masters of reality itself, are predictable?" "Not predictable," Jake said carefully. "Just understandable. You think like the strongest creatures in the galaxy, because that is what you are. But sometimes the biggest danger comes from prey that learn to think in a different way." The hall erupted in noise. Aliens shouted in hundreds of languages. The translation computers could barely keep up. The humans had just told the most powerful beings in the galaxy that they were doing everything wrong. Supreme Chancellor Vilix used his mental powers to make everyone quiet. "Ambassador Morrison, your species has shown courage in speaking truth. However, I think this meeting has become unproductive. We will meet again tomorrow to make our final plans." As the great beings left the hall, the humans stayed in their seats. They seemed unbothered by the angry looks directed at them. They had just challenged the basic beliefs of galactic civilization, but they had done it from the back row, where they could see everything and everyone could see them. And now, for the first time in galactic history, the most powerful beings in the universe were wondering if the weakest species might know something they did not. The next morning, the great hall filled with beings again. The most powerful creatures in the galaxy took their usual seats at the front. They had spent the night thinking about what the humans had said, and most of them were not happy about. The crystal people sat in their front row, their diamond bodies harder than ever. They had been the rulers of space for millions of years. No young species had ever questioned their methods before. Behind them, the mind readers gathered their thoughts into one powerful voice. Their giant brains pulsed with purple light as they prepared to show why their mental powers were the best defense against any enemy. The machine empire rolled into their seats with loud mechanical sounds. Their robot bodies were bigger today, loaded with more weapons and powered by brighter suns burning in their chests. The humans walked to the back row again. Jake Morrison led his small team to the same seats they had chosen the day before. Other beings watched them with different feelings now. Some were curious, others were angry. A few seemed worried. "The humans think they know better than us," whispered one alien to another. "They have been flying in space for only a few years, but they want to tell us how to fight." Lisa Hayes sat down and looked around the hall with calm eyes. She had been a soldier for many years and had learned to read danger in people's faces. Today, she saw more danger than before. Ben Carter opened his tablet and began what looked like simple note-taking, but his fingers moved in patterns that meant something else entirely. He was actually running secret programs that scanned the hall's computer systems. Amy Fletcher reviewed her research files. She had spent the whole night studying the Void Harbinger attacks. The more she learned, the more worried she became. These enemies were not like anything the galaxy had seen before. Supreme Chancellor Vilix called the meeting to order. "Today, we will finalize our defense plans. Each major species will present their final strategy." The crystal people spoke first. Their leader, a being like a walking mountain of diamond, stood up and spoke in a voice that rang like bells. "We will create a crystal wall across 3 star systems. It will be alive and growing, always getting stronger. No enemy can break through living crystal that repairs itself." The hall filled with approving sounds. The plan was impressive. A wall of living crystal that could grow and fix itself would be almost impossible to destroy. The mind readers came next. Their leader's brain grew brighter as he spoke. "We will link our minds together and create a mental barrier around our galaxy. Any enemy that tries to cross it will lose their sanity. Their minds will be destroyed before they can attack." More approval from the audience. The mental powers of the mind readers were legendary. Their psychic abilities could drive entire armies insane from across the galaxy. The machine empire presented their plan with mechanical precision. "We will build a fleet of automated war machines. Each ship will be the size of a moon and carry weapons that can destroy stars. They will fight without rest, without fear, without mercy." The hall erupted in cheers. These 3 plans together would create defenses unlike anything ever seen. Crystal walls, mental barriers, and robot fleets would protect the galaxy from any threat. Other powerful species added their own plans. The Time Walkers would slow time around the galaxy's edge, making it impossible for enemies to move quickly. The Reality Shapers would bend the laws of physics to create impossible defenses. The Star Eaters would devour suns and use their power to fuel massive weapons. Each plan was more impressive than the last, The beings in the hall felt confident again. These were the kinds of defenses that had kept the galaxy safe for millions of years. Big, powerful, obvious shows of strength that scared enemies away. Hours passed as species after species presented their mighty plans. The humans sat quietly in the back row, writing notes and saying nothing. They looked like students trying to learn from their teachers. Finally, Supreme Chancellor Vilix looked toward the back of the hall. His voice carried a tone of polite duty rather than real interest. Ambassador Morrison, does your species wish to present anything to the Assembly? Jake stood up slowly. The hall became quiet as thousands of powerful beings turned to look at this small human who had dared to criticize their methods the day before. We do have some observations, Chancellor, but we understand that our species is still very new to galactic politics. Perhaps it would be better if we shared our thoughts privately at a more appropriate time. General Thrax laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Come now, Ambassador, we are all civilized beings here. Share your wisdom with us. The way he said wisdom made it clear that he was making fun of the humans. Around the hall, other beings made similar sounds of amusement. They were humoring the humans the way adults might humor a child who wanted to help with grown-up work. Jake looked at Lisa, who gave him a small nod. Very well. We have been studying the Void Harbinger attack patterns for several months now. We believe the current defensive strategies have a fundamental flaw. The amusement in the hall died instantly. The temperature seemed to drop as thousands of powerful beings focused their attention on this small human who had just said their plans were wrong. A fundamental flaw? Admiral Nexus's voice crackled with energy and anger. Young species, we have protected this galaxy since before your son was born. We have defeated enemies that could destroy entire dimensions. With respect, Admiral, Jake replied in a calm voice, that experience might be part of the problem. You have been successful for so long that you always use the same methods. But the Void Harbingers are not like your previous enemies. Amy Fletcher activated her tablet and projected a holographic image above the center of the hall. We have analyzed all available data from the Harbinger attacks. These beings do not just have power. They have the ability to adapt and learn in real time during combat. The image showed the attack on the Kepler star system in detail. At first, the Harbingers had fought like a normal enemy fleet. But as the defenders used their weapons, the Harbingers began to change. They learned from each attack, adapted to each defense, and developed new abilities on the spot. The Kepler system had defenses similar to what you are planning, Amy continued. Crystal barriers, mental shields, automated weapons. The Harbingers studied each one, learned how it worked, and then found ways to counter it. The image showed how the battle had progressed. The Harbingers had absorbed the crystal barriers and made them part of their own bodies. They had turned the mental shields against the defenders. They had taken control of the automated weapons and used them against their creators. Your proposed defenses, Amy said, are exactly what they expect. Large, obvious, powerful. The kind of defenses that advanced species would naturally build. You are giving them exactly what they need to learn how to defeat you. The silence that followed was complete. These beings had ruled the galaxy for so long that they had never been told their methods were wrong. The idea that their greatest strengths might be predictable was almost impossible to accept. Lord Commander Zephyr rose to his full height, his body crackling with barely contained stellar energy. You dare suggest that we, the masters of reality itself, are predictable to some upstart invaders? Not predictable, Jake said carefully, but understandable. You think like apex predators because that is what you are. You have been the strongest beings in the galaxy for so long that you have forgotten what it is like to be hunted. The hall erupted in a storm of alien voices. Beings who could reshape reality with their thoughts shouted in outrage. Species who had never known defeat roared their anger. The translation computers struggled to keep up with the chaos. "You forget your place, human," screamed a being made of living fire. "We have conquered galaxies while your species was still learning to use tools. We have fought wars that lasted longer than your entire civilization," added a creature that looked like a walking mountain. "What can you possibly know about real warfare?" Jake waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. "We know what it is like to be prey. We know what it is like to be hunted by things stronger than us. We know what it is like to survive when everyone expects us to die." His words cut through the anger like a knife. The hall became quiet again as beings who had never been anything but predators tried to understand what he meant. "You fight like apex predators," Jake continued. "You use your greatest strengths in the most obvious ways. You build big defenses and challenge your enemies to break them. But the Void Harbingers are not impressed by your strength. They see it as a learning opportunity." Ben Carter stood up and activated his tablet. "We have run computer simulations of your defense plans against known Harbinger capabilities. In every simulation, your defenses fail within hours." A new holographic display appeared, showing the results of the simulations. Crystal walls crumbled as the Harbingers learned to dissolve them. Mental barriers shattered as the enemies adapted to psychic attacks. Robot fleets turned against their creators as the Harbingers took control of their systems. "This is impossible," Supreme Chancellor Vilix said, his ancient voice shaking with disbelief. "Our defenses are based on millions of years of successful warfare against enemies who fought like you," Lisa Hayes said, speaking for the first time. "But these enemies do not fight like you. They fight like us, too." The attack came in the middle of the night when most of the galaxy's leaders were sleeping. There were no warning sirens, no emergency alerts, no signs of approaching danger. The Void Harbingers did not come as a massive fleet of warships or a swarm of fighters. They came as a single, ordinary-looking transport ship that somehow appeared in the middle of Zentari. Prime's strongest defenses. The planetary defense grid was the most advanced in the galaxy. It had sensors that could detect a single grain of sand moving at light speed. It had weapons that could destroy entire fleets before they got within 1,000,000 kilometers of the planet. It had shields that could stop the explosion of a star. But the defense grid did not detect the Void Harbingers. It did not fire its weapons. It did not raise its shields. Instead, it simply turned off, as if someone had pressed a switch. The first sign of trouble came when the Crystal People's Embassy suddenly went dark. The building had been made of living crystal that glowed with its own inner light. The crystal had been alive for 1,000 years, fed by the power of the planet's core. It should have been impossible to kill, but the light died in seconds, and the crystal began to crack and crumble. The crystal people who lived in the embassy rushed outside to defend their home. They were beings of living diamond, harder than any metal, stronger than any armor. They could survive in the vacuum of space and withstand the heat of a star's core. It lasted 37 seconds. The Void Harbingers moved through the city like a living shadow. They did not have one shape or form. Instead, they flowed and changed, becoming whatever they needed to become to counter each new threat. When the mind readers tried to attack their thoughts, the Harbingers absorbed the mental energy and sent it back 3 times stronger. The mind readers' giant brains exploded from their own reflected power. When the machine empire deployed their war robots, the Harbingers flowed into the machines and took control of them. The robots turned their weapons on their creators. Fighting with perfect mechanical precision. In the Great Hall, emergency alarms finally began to sound. The building's defense systems activated, sealing all the doors and windows. Protective. Barriers rose from the floor. The hall was supposed to be the safest place on the planet, but the assembled beings watched the security screens with growing terror as their greatest defenses failed one by one. The creatures who could reshape reality with their thoughts were trapped inside a building, watching their civilizations crumble on the monitors. How is this possible? Admiral Nexus asked, his energy form flickering with panic. Our defenses are absolute. Nothing should be able to penetrate them. They are not penetrating your defenses, Amy Fletcher said calmly from her seat in the back row. They are becoming your defenses. Every time you attack them, they learn something new. Every weapon you use becomes their weapon. The humans had remained in their seats while chaos erupted around them. While beings who could bend the laws of physics cowered in terror, the humans seemed almost bored. They watched the screens with professional interest, like doctors studying an interesting disease. This is what we tried to warn you about, Jake Morrison said, his voice cutting through the noise. You have been thinking like predators for so long that you have forgotten what it is like to be prey. But we have not forgotten. On the screens, the Void Harbingers had reached the outer defenses of the Great Hall. The building's computer systems were the most advanced in the galaxy, created by a dozen different species working together. They should have been impossible to hack or control, but the screens showed system after system going offline. The Harbingers were not breaking through the defenses. They were convincing the defenses to open the doors and welcome them inside. What do you propose we do? Supreme Chancellor Vilix asked. For the first time in his 10,000 years of life, his voice carried genuine fear. Jake stood up slowly, his movement drawing every eye in the hall. We do what prey animals do when the predator comes hunting. We disappear. Lisa Hayes was already moving, her fingers dancing across her tablet as she accessed systems that should not have been accessible. Emergency Protocol 7, everyone. Time to go. Go where? General Thrax demanded. They have surrounded the building. There is nowhere to run. They have surrounded the building they think we are in, Ben Carter replied, his tablet displaying a complex diagram of the halls. Structure. But we are not in that building anymore. The humans began to move with sudden coordination. What had looked like casual seating arrangements revealed themselves as carefully planned positions. The tablets they had used for taking notes were actually sophisticated computers. The quiet observers were actually a military unit in disguise. You see, Jake explained as his team worked, when you are a predator, you build obvious strongholds and dare your enemies to attack them. When you are prey, you build hidden escape routes and hope no one notices them. The truth was shocking. The humans had not just asked for seats in the back row. They had spent months secretly modifying the hall itself. They had built hidden passages, emergency systems, backup power sources, and even a small weapons cache disguised as decorative features. Impossible, Lord Commander Zephyr whispered. Our security scans would have detected any unauthorized modifications. Your security scans detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Lisa replied as she activated a hidden panel in the wall. Rule number 1 of being prey. Never let the predator know where you really are. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing a passage that had not existed on any blueprint. The humans had been building their escape route for months, right under the noses of the galaxy's most powerful beings. You have been planning this, Supreme Chancellor Vilix said, his mental voice weak with shock. You knew this would happen. We hoped it would not happen, Jake replied. But we prepared for it anyway. That is what prey animals do. We always have a backup plan. The passage led to a network of tunnels that ran beneath the Great Hall. The humans had built an entire underground facility while the galaxy's leaders had been arguing about politics and showing off their power. How long have you been building this? Admiral Nexus asked as they moved through the tunnels. Since the day we first joined the galactic community, Amy Fletcher replied. We have been studying all of you, learning your strengths and weaknesses, preparing for the day when we might need to survive you. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber filled with human technology. Banks of computers processed data from across the galaxy. Holographic displays showed the Void Harbinger's movements in real time. Human technicians worked quietly at their stations, tracking the invasion with calm efficiency. Welcome to Command Station Alpha, announced a man in military uniform. This was Colonel Pete Williams, the real military leader of the human mission. Jake Morrison had been just the diplomatic face of a much larger operation. We have been watching the Harbingers for 3 months, Colonel Williams continued, ever since they first appeared at the edge of the galaxy. We have been studying their attack patterns, their adaptation methods, and their weaknesses. The assembled aliens stared in amazement at the facility. The humans, supposedly the weakest species in the galaxy, had built a command center that rivaled anything the great powers could create. More importantly, they had done it without anyone knowing. This level of construction should have been impossible to hide, General Thrax said, his warrior's mind trying to understand how this could have happened. We did not hide it, Amy Fletcher replied, activating a holographic display. We built it in plain sight. Your security forces saw exactly what we wanted them to see. The display showed the construction timeline. The humans had been building their facility for years, disguising their work as routine maintenance, infrastructure upgrades, and diplomatic improvements. Every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange, every diplomatic meeting had been an opportunity to add another piece to their hidden base. You have been lying to us, Supreme Chancellor Vilex said, his ancient voice heavy with betrayal. We have been surviving, Jake replied. When you are the weakest species in a galaxy full of predators, you do whatever it takes to stay alive. The screens around the command center showed the Void Harbingers spreading through the city above. They flowed from building to building, adapting to every defense, learning from every weapon used against them. But the humans were tracking their every movement, analyzing their every adaptation. You want to know why we prefer the back row? Jake asked the assembled beings. It is not because we are weak. It is because the back row is where you can see everything. It is where you can watch the predators reveal their strengths and weaknesses. It is where you can plan. Colonel Williams activated a new display showing a 3-dimensional map of the city. Thousands of small markers were scattered throughout the urban area. We have been placing these devices for months. Sensors, communication, relays, and other equipment. Not enough to trigger your security systems, but enough to turn your city into our battlefield. Your city? Lord Commander Zephyr asked, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Your city, Jake agreed, but our trap. The revelation hit the assembled beings like a physical blow. The humans had not just been hiding in the back row. They had been preparing. They had turned the entire galactic core. The hidden tunnels beneath the Great Hall stretched for kilometers in every direction. As the humans led the galaxy's most powerful beings through the passages, the true scope of their preparation became clear. This was not just an escape route. It was an entire shadow civilization, built right under everyone's noses. The walls were lined with human technology that hummed quietly in the darkness. Cables and pipes ran along the ceiling, carrying power and information to dozens of hidden facilities. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows that made the tunnel seem to go on forever. How far does this go? Admiral Nexus asked, his energy form flickering with nervous light. The entire city, Ben Carter replied, checking his tablet as they walked. Every major building, every important facility, every strategic location. We have been building this network for 3 years. Supreme Chancellor Vilex stopped walking, his ancient mind trying to understand what he was hearing. "You have built a secret city beneath our capital. How is this possible?" "We are very good at being invisible," Jake Morrison said. "When you are prey, you learn to live in the spaces that predators do not think to look." The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took away the breath of every being who saw it. The room was the size of a small city, filled with human technology and workers. Hundreds of humans moved between computer stations, monitoring screens, and control panels. The air hummed with the sound of machines and the quiet conversations of people doing important work. "This is impossible," General Thrax said, his warrior's mind unable to accept what he was seeing. "Our security forces scan every cubic meter of this planet every day. They would have found this. They found exactly what we wanted them to find." Amy Fletcher replied, leading them to a central control station. "We have been very careful to show them only what they expected to see." The main display screen showed a cutaway view of the entire city. The surface looked normal, but underneath was a maze of tunnels, chambers, and facilities that had not existed on any official plans. The humans had built an entire hidden world right beneath the feet of the galaxy's rulers. "You have been spying on us," Lord Commander Zephyr accused, his stellar energy crackling with anger. "We have been learning about you," Jake corrected. "There is a difference." Colonel Pete Williams stepped forward, his military bearing making it clear that he was in charge of this operation. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the real heart of human operations in this galaxy. What you have seen above ground was just for show." The assembled beings stared in shock at the facility around them. The humans, supposedly the weakest species in the galaxy, had built a command center that was more advanced than anything the great powers possessed. Banks of computers processed information from across the galaxy. Holographic displays showed real-time data from thousands of sources. "We have been monitoring every species in this galaxy since we first made contact," Colonel Williams continued. "Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange has been an opportunity to gather intelligence." The screens around the command center displayed detailed files on every major species. The crystal people's molecular structure, the mind reader's psychic frequencies, the machine empire's control codes. The humans had been studying their galactic neighbors not as friends or allies, but as potential threats to be understood and, if necessary, neutralized. "This is a violation of every treaty we have signed," Supreme Chancellor Vilix said, his mental voice heavy with anger and betrayal. "We have broken no laws," Jake replied calmly. "We have simply been very good students. Everything we learned from public sources or from things you willingly shared with us." Dr. Rebecca Stone, a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward from one of the computer stations. "We have been analyzing your behavior patterns, your military capabilities, and your psychological profiles for years. It is amazing how much information you can gather just by watching and listening." She activated a display that showed psychological profiles of every major species leader. Their strengths, weaknesses, fears, and motivations were laid out in detail. Charts and graphs. The humans had been reading the galaxy's most powerful beings like open books. "You know us better than we know ourselves," General Thrax admitted, staring at his own profile with fascination and horror. "We had to," Lisa Hayes replied. "When you are surrounded by beings who can destroy planets with their thoughts, you learn everything you can about them. Knowledge is the only weapon that prey animals have against predators." Amy Fletcher activated another display, this one showing the Void Harbinger's attack patterns in real time. "We have been tracking the Harbingers since they first appeared at the galaxy's edge. We have analyzed every attack, every adaptation, every change in their behavior." The display showed attack after attack, each one revealing more about how the Harbingers operated. They were learning machines, absorbing and adapting to whatever they encountered. But learning required patterns, and patterns could be predicted. They are not random destroyers, Amy explained. They are systematic learners. They attack the strongest targets first, because strong targets teach them the most. They seek out advanced technology, because advanced technology gives them new capabilities. That is why all your defensive plans would have failed, Jake added. You were giving them exactly what they wanted to learn from. Your greatest strengths were their greatest opportunities. Colonel Williams activated a new section of the display, showing detailed plans that the humans had been developing for months. We have been preparing for this day since we first learned about the Harbingers. We knew they would come here eventually, because this planet contains representatives from every advanced species in the galaxy. The plans were complex and detailed, covering every aspect of the city's defenses and infrastructure. But these were not the kind of defenses that the galaxy's powers would normally build. They were subtle, hidden, designed to misdirect rather than overwhelm. You have turned our entire capital into a trap, Admiral Nexus realized, his energy form pulsing with nervous light. We have turned your capital into a classroom, Ben Carter corrected. A place where we can teach the Harbingers exactly what we want them to learn. The genius of the plan became clear as the humans explained it. They were not trying to stop the Harbingers from learning. Instead, they were controlling what the Harbingers learned. Every defense the aliens encountered, every adaptation they made, was being guided by hidden human systems. The Harbingers think they are adapting to defeat you, Dr. Stone explained. But they are actually adapting according to our plan. We are teaching them to become something specific, something we know how to defeat. Lord Commander Zephyr's stellar energy flared with understanding and anger. You have been using us as bait. You let them attack us so you could study them. We have been using everyone as teachers, Jake replied, including ourselves. The only way to understand a learning machine is to let it learn, and then learn from its learning. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just prepared for this attack. They had helped orchestrate it. They had positioned the galaxy's leaders exactly where they needed them to be, at exactly the right time, to give the Harbingers exactly the right lessons. This level of manipulation, Supreme Chancellor Vilix said slowly, requires a depth of planning and patience that we did not think your species possessed. You thought we were young and inexperienced, Lisa Hayes replied. But our youth is our strength. We have not had millions of years to develop bad habits. We have not forgotten what it means to be afraid. The screens showed the Harbingers moving through the city above, their forms now locked into specific configurations based on what they had learned from the galaxy's defenses. They had become exactly what the humans needed them to become, predictable and vulnerable. How long have you been planning this? General Thrax asked, his respect for human cunning growing with each revelation. Since the day we first joined. The galactic community, Jake admitted. We knew that sooner or later we would face a threat that was too big for us to handle alone. So we prepared to handle it together, whether you wanted to help us or not. Amy Fletcher pulled up a timeline, showing years of careful preparation. Every diplomatic contact, every trade agreement, every cultural exchange had been part of a larger plan. The humans had been positioning themselves, gathering resources, and building capabilities while appearing to be nothing more than eager students. You have been playing a game while we thought we were just living our lives, Admiral Nexus said, with something that might have been admiration. We have been playing the only game that matters, Jake replied. The survival game. And in that game, the winner is not the strongest, or the fastest, or the most advanced. The winner is the one who is still alive when the game ends. Dr. Stone activated a new display showing the current status of the Harbinger's adaptation process. They have now absorbed defensive technologies from 12 different species. They have adapted to energy weapons, psychic attacks, automated systems, and temporal manipulation. They think they have learned everything they need to know. But they have not learned the most important lesson, Colonel Williams added, with a smile that made the galaxy's most powerful beings very nervous. They haven't. The Void Harbingers had spent hours adapting to every advanced weapon and sophisticated defense the galaxy could produce. They had learned to absorb energy attacks, counter psychic assaults, and subvert artificial intelligence. Their forms had shifted and changed until they could handle any threat that advanced civilization might throw at them. They had never encountered fire, not the clean, controlled energy of plasma weapons or laser cannons. Real fire. Chemical combustion that produced heat, smoke, and chaos in ways that defied the logical patterns the Harbingers expected from advanced technology. Activating Hunter Protocol, Colonel Williams announced from the human command center deep beneath the city. Around him, dozens of human technicians worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. All teams, begin Phase 1. Throughout the city, hidden devices began to activate. Not weapons in any sense that the galaxy's great powers would recognize, but tools that humanity had been using since before they learned to make metal. Simple chemical reactions that produced flame and smoke. Amy Fletcher monitored the Harbingers. Responses on her screens. They are trying to adapt to the fire, but they cannot understand what they are adapting to. Fire is not a technology. It is a natural process. The Harbingers moved through the burning city like confused shadows. Their learning systems were designed to analyze and counter sophisticated threats. But fire was not sophisticated. It was one of the oldest tools in the universe, and the Harbingers' advanced minds could not process something so primitive. They are beautiful in a way, Dr. Rebecca Stone murmured, watching the aliens struggle with something as simple as burning wood. Perfect learning machines designed to counter any advanced threat. But evolution made them too smart to understand stupidity. Jake Morrison stood at the central command station, watching the carefully orchestrated chaos unfold above them. Begin. Phase 2. Activate the herding protocols. Across the city, more devices came online, not weapons, but barriers. Walls of flame that guided the Harbingers along predetermined paths. Smoke screens that blocked their vision and forced them to move in specific directions. Simple tools that any human hunter would recognize. We are not trying to kill them yet, Lisa Hayes explained to the watching alien leaders. We are herding them, moving them where we want them to go. This is how humans have always hunted. We do not overwhelm our prey with strength. We guide it into traps. The Harbingers found themselves being pushed through the city like cattle. Every time they tried to move in one direction, they encountered walls of fire and smoke. Every time they adapted to one obstacle, 3 more appeared to block their path. This is impossible, Supreme Chancellor Vilex said, his ancient mind struggling to understand what he was seeing. How can simple fire be more effective than our most advanced weapons? Because your most advanced weapons are exactly what they were designed to counter, Ben Carter replied, his fingers dancing over his control systems. But fire is older than their creators. It is older than their programming. They have no reference point for understanding it. General Thrax watched the tactical display with growing amazement. You are hunting them like animals. We are hunting them like humans, Jake corrected. This is how our species learned to survive on a world full of predators stronger than us. We used tools they did not understand and tactics they could not predict. The Harbingers were being driven through the city along carefully planned routes. Human teams moved through hidden passages, always staying ahead of their quarry, always ready with the next obstacle or misdirection. Phase 3, Colonel Williams announced. Begin the exhaustion protocol. The fire and smoke were not just barriers. They were also drains on the Harbinger's energy. Every adaptation they made, every Change they attempted required power, and power was not infinite, even for beings as advanced as the Void Harbingers. They are learning machines, Amy Fletcher observed, but learning requires energy. The more they learn, the more energy they consume. We are forcing them to learn faster than they can efficiently process. The Harbingers began to slow down. Their movements became less fluid, less coordinated. The constant adaptations were wearing them down, forcing them to make choices about which threats to prioritize. Now they are vulnerable, Dr. Stone announced. Their adaptation systems are overloaded. They cannot change fast enough to keep up with our attacks. Phase 4, Jake commanded. Release the hounds. Throughout the city, the galaxy's most powerful, beings emerged from their hiding places. But they were not fighting as they normally would. Instead, they followed human coordination, striking only when and where the humans directed them. The Crystal People attacked with precisely targeted strikes, hitting harbingers that had been weakened by fire and confusion. The mind readers focused their psychic attacks on aliens whose mental defenses had been compromised by exhaustion. The Machine Empire deployed their robots in carefully coordinated patterns that the humans had designed. You are using us as weapons, Admiral Nexus realized, his energy form pulsing with understanding. We are using you as hunters, Lisa corrected. Each of you is perfectly designed to kill specific types of prey. But you were trying to hunt predators. We have turned them into prey. The battle turned into a series of carefully planned ambushes. The Harbingers, exhausted and confused, found themselves facing enemies whose attacks they could no longer adapt to quickly enough. The combination of primitive tactics and advanced weapons was devastating. This is how pack hunting works, Jake explained to the watching aliens. Different hunters with different skills, all working together under coordinated leadership. No single hunter is stronger than the prey, but the pack together is unstoppable. Lord Commander Zephyr struck down a harbinger that had been driven into his ambush position by walls of fire and smoke. Incredible. They cannot adapt fast enough when we attack from multiple directions with multiple methods. That is because adaptation requires time and energy, Amy Fletcher said. We have taken away both. They are no longer learning. They are just reacting. One by one, the Void Harbingers fell, not to overwhelming displays of power, but to carefully coordinated attacks that exploited weaknesses the humans had helped create. The galaxy's mightiest beings had become an efficient hunting pack under human leadership. The last one is down, Colonel Williams reported. All Harbinger signals have ceased. The city is secure. A command center erupted in quiet celebration. The humans had done more than save the galaxy. They had revolutionized the very concept of warfare by showing that intelligence could triumph over raw power. Supreme, Chancellor Vilix floated in the center of the command center, his ancient mind, trying to process what had just happened. You have saved us all. But more than that, you have taught us something we did not know we needed to learn. What is that? Jake asked. That the most dangerous predator is not always the strongest one. Sometimes it is the smartest one. General Thrax approached Jake with something that looked like respect. Your species has shown wisdom that we lack. You think like prey, but you fight like predators. It is a combination we have never encountered. It is a combination born of necessity, Jake replied. When you are the weakest species in a galaxy full of giants, you learn to use your brain instead of your muscles. Amy Fletcher was already analyzing the aftermath of the battle. We learned something important today. The Harbingers were not invincible. They were just facing the wrong kind of opposition. They were designed to counter strength, but they had no defense against cunning. What happens now? Admiral Nexus asked. Will your species continue to hide in the back row, pretending to be weak? Jake looked around at the assembled beings, all of whom were now looking at him with new respect and not a little fear. We will continue to sit in the back row, but not because we are weak. Then why? Supreme Chancellor Vilex asked. Because the back row is where you can see everything, Lisa Hayes answered. It is where you can watch for the next threat. It is where you can prepare for whatever comes next. The truth settled over the assembled beings like a heavy blanket. The humans had not just saved them from the Void Harbingers. They had revealed that they were prepared for any threat the galaxy might face. They had been watching, learning, and planning from the very beginning. You have been protecting us without us knowing it, General Thrax said slowly. How long have you been doing this? Since the day we first joined the galactic community, Jake admitted. We saw a galaxy full of powerful beings who had forgotten what it meant to be vulnerable. We knew that sooner or later, something would come along that your power could not stop. So we prepared to stop it for you. Colonel Williams activated a final display showing the scope of human operations throughout the galaxy. Hidden bases, secret networks, emergency protocols. The humans had been building a shadow defense system for years, protecting their galactic neighbors, whether those neighbors wanted protection or not. This is why we prefer the back row, Jake said quietly. Not because we are weak, but because we are watchers. We are the species that remembers what it is like to be prey. And because we remember, we can protect the predators when something bigger comes hunting. 6 months later, the Great Hall on Centauri Prime hosted another assembly. The seating arrangement was the same as always.